back to the Swamp247 Podcast. I'm Thomas Goldkamp. We have a special announcement for you guys today. We are welcoming a new member to the Swamp247 team. Today we've got Brett DioGuardi with us. He's a former Florida long snapper from 2016 to 2020. And I was joking with Brett about it before the show. You know, Blake and I, we're kind of the talking heads, and Brett will lend us kind of a real air of credibility, some X's and O's knowledge, some locker room knowledge. So, Brett, we are thrilled to have you on, man. How's it going?
Good, man. I'm super excited to join you guys. Looking forward to it.
All righty. Well, let's get into talking about what happened yesterday. Obviously, you know, going into that Florida-Georgia game, I think everybody kind of had the expectation that that game could snowball on Florida. And, you know, really for the first quarter, I thought Florida did a pretty good job doing everything it needed to do. The defense, you know, showed up, looked like a little bit of a rough first series, but I thought, generally speaking, did okay. And I guess, guys, let's talk about where it went wrong. I mean, that stretch just before halftime, to me, that's kind of a microcosm of Florida's season. But what were your takeaways from the game? Either one of you.
You know, for me, I think it was just, I agree, the first quarter went really well. You know, whenever you have a young quarterback in there like Anthony Richardson making his first start, you know, you expect some turnovers, you know, some things maybe move slower. But, you know, it really did start to snowball on them. You know, that was kind of a wild moment right there in the second quarter where it's like, you know, if you get up and, you know, use the bathroom or grab a drink or something like that and you come back and, you know, it's a very different game. You know, things happen very quickly, and it just seemed like that hole was something that Florida couldn't get themselves out of.
Yeah, no, I agree, certainly. I mean, to be honest, going into the game, it had that weird kind of feeling to me prior to that Alabama game where you think, you know, what's going to happen, not really having any idea how we're going to come out and play. 0-0 at half. I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, we're going to, you know, make this thing a game. And you got 2 minutes left in the second quarter. You're only down, you know, 3 points. And you're thinking to yourself, like, wow, we're really going to hang in this game. And like you said, you could go use the bathroom. You come back, we're down, you know, 24-0. You're thinking to yourself, like, how did that happen? And it was just a unfortunate situation. And they capitalized on turnovers. You know, I think it's crazy too. We had fumble, one play, touchdown, next drive, interception, one play. So, you know, credit to Georgia for taking advantage of turnovers and capitalizing.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's something that Dan Mullen talked about after the game, and I think it's one thing that's been missing for Florida this year is you always hear defenses talk about going out and putting out the fire. You know, if the offense makes a mistake, the defense, no matter where it is on the field, has to go out there and kind of, you know, come up with a stop. Like that's their job, and I think Florida hasn't been very good at that this year. You know, they haven't been good at forcing takeaways. They haven't been good at not turning the ball over on offense. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing a little bit of, you know, talent drop off at Florida. I mean, I think, you know, that's an obvious thing at this point. I guess let's talk about Anthony Richardson a little bit. Brett, I want to get your take on how he played yesterday, because obviously a very, very tough situation for him to walk into. I mean, anybody knows that. It's one of the toughest defenses really in college football probably over the last 10 years. You know, a lot of people have compared them to 2011 Alabama. I think we saw probably, in my opinion, kind of what Dan Mullen was talking about, the things that Anthony Richardson maybe needed to go through to grow from. What was your takeaway from how Anthony played? And was it a setback in the sense of you're worried about where he kind of goes from here, or not really?
No, not at all. I mean, it's tough, you know. Now I know Emory, you know, was going through it with Gator fans and stuff. And when you're that backup quarterback and a quarterback ahead of you struggling, it's always very easy, you know, for fans to be like, oh, you know, this guy would be doing way better. And I think they're both great quarterbacks. You know, they're different kind of play style, but Anthony's more of a run you over type guy. Emory's an elusive guy, but it was just a tough situation, man. Like you said, this Georgia defense, I was reading an article, you know, a couple of days ago, and it had a great point that all 11 starters on this defense very well could end up in the NFL, which it's just a crazy thing to think of. You know, he's basically going out there against a bunch of future NFL players, and I'm not worried about his progression at all. It was definitely tough, and it's a growing pain. You know, I would have liked to see him do a lot better than he did, but it's a real tough opponent. I think he's going to be fine. If anything, this is great. You know, build a little chip on his shoulder. He's a great dude in person too. He's, you know, very genuine guy and a great character off the field. So I'm looking forward to seeing him bounce back big time, but I'm not worried about him long term. I think if anything, it's just a little growing pain.
Blake, where do you stand on, I guess, whether or not Anthony should have been a little bit more involved early, because I know that's kind of the common thing that fans are bringing up right now is, we put him in a situation to fail, so to speak, because you are playing against one of the best, defenses in college football. And, we don't really know with the hamstring injury, but it seems like maybe he could have gotten a little bit more involved earlier on in some games where you're not facing, an absolute juggernaut.
Yeah, I think that would have helped him get, just a little bit more game experience. I think that would have been necessary. Obviously, it didn't happen, but even if he had all those experiences, I don't think he would have been ready to play a defense like Georgia's. I think even if you have those experiences in there, I still think that Georgia's talented enough on defense to where, those bang bang type of plays with the pick six and the interceptions, I think those things could have still happened. So, while I do think that it would have been beneficial for them to get him on the field, get him that experiences early, just continue to help him mold from, not understanding the checks here, really getting him more of a grasp of the offense. I think those things would have obviously been helpful from him getting that game experience, but I still don't think that it would have been ready. I don't think he would have been prepared enough to play a defense like Georgia, just because I think they're that talented.
And I think I think where that leaves us kind of is, we're talking about this Georgia game to start off the show because that happened yesterday. But I think bigger picture wise, there's a lot of questions about where the program is right now, and we'll talk more about that in the second half of the show. But one thing that stood out immediately in the post game, I asked Dan Mullen if he thought recruiting was up to snuff on his side, and kind of bristled back. Well, we weren't recruiting today; we were coaching a game. It was game day. And on the flip side, I don't know the exact question that was asked to Kirby Smart, but he was asked about recruiting, the talent level, that kind of thing, and it was basically a direct subtweet at Dan Mullen. I mean, he said, in no uncertain terms, you're not going to win if you don't go out there and eat, sleep, breathe recruiting every day at this level in the SEC. And, if you go back to, I know there was I forget exactly what year, but right after Justin Fields transferred, Dan Mullen kind of had the little subtle remark about, some recruiters promise these kids the world and then they get there and it's totally different. These two coaches have kind of battled back and forth, with those type of comments over the last 4 years, but it's hard to argue when you see the talent discrepancy that was on the field yesterday that Kirby Smart's maybe not got the right approach, in my opinion. I mean, for Florida to get where they want to be, in my opinion, they've got to start recruiting a little bit closer to Kirby Smart. Brett, am I wrong there?
Oh, no, I was actually about to chime in there. I agree completely. It's just a big drop off in talent, especially right now for the recruiting classes for upcoming years. And even my time there, it's frustrating. I'm not saying we didn't have the guys, to win a SEC championship. We did, but it's like, you're just looking at the recruiting or you're watching the commitment videos because, all these guys nowadays, they make everything all about social media and posts and everything. But it's just tough because you got Alabama and you got Georgia who are just top 1 and 2 almost every year. And it seems like we can never really get that 5-star guy that they get, 3 to 4 of them each year at least. And it's just a cycle. It's crazy to me. We get excited when we get, a 4-star or 3-star, and then you got Kirby just getting constant 5 stars. And one other thing I wanted to add, I think it was funny how you said that thing about Mullen. Let's be honest. I mean, being a former player, they promise you a whole bunch. And right when you get there, it's like you could make a TikTok or a joke about it. Like, oh, you're my best friend. Can't wait to work with you, man. You're going to be an NFL draft pick, this or that. You get there, you're, first workout, they're like 5-star. You're not a 5-star now. Like, you're bottom of the pecking order. Like, you need to earn stuff. And I just think it's funny, best friend when your parents are there and you're recruiting and everything. And then once you get there, it's like back to square one. Like, oh crap. Like, okay, he's a lot different than when I was getting recruited,
Yeah, that de-recruiting happens quick. Real quick.
Oh, immediately. Yeah.
What is Dan Mullen like as a recruiter? Because Blake obviously covers it and hears from the kids, but what was your impression? I mean, what does he do well as the guy that comes into your living room and is trying to sell you?
I mean, shoot, he's great at selling it. I think he'd be a great car dealer or dealership guy, and he's big on the standard, which I do got to give him credit. He reiterates it every time we have a team meeting. The core values of the program. The one thing I really do got to give him credit for is when McElwain left, there wasn't really a true identity with the team, and discipline was a huge issue. We had a lot of issues, failed drug tests, people just doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And he did a great job of doing that off rip, which honestly, it's funny I mentioned this because now I'm thinking to myself, like, it just seems like the discipline factor is kind of starting to fade off. It definitely has. I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I first got there, it was, super strict discipline, a lot of structured everything. And I mean, it's tough when you have COVID, because the whole COVID going on kind of resets everything. And it was tough to even survive, having a season and let alone worry about, the structure of the team and everything. But in general, he does a great job with the Gators standard. When he first got there, I feel like it's kind of, fallen off a little bit, but he's big on selling you, it's not hard to sell, top 5 school, academically, great academics, usually a great football program. But in general, there's something, unless, Kirby Smart's over here writing, blank checks or something, I just don't know how everybody's they're getting all these 5 stars. Who wouldn't want to come play at Florida, especially right now? Shoot, all these guys that are like, oh, I'm the best wide receiver in the country, I'm going to come in and start. Like, shoot, you actually might at Florida right now. You can come in, great playing time, playing the SEC. But in general, he didn't. I was a long snapper, as you know, so not too much recruiting for me. Maybe a couple Twitter DMs or a couple of phone calls from some special teams coordinators. But in general, you could just tell there's a huge difference in the talent level these past couple of years. So Kirby and you don't even have to talk about Saban. He's in his own category, but there's definitely something we're not doing, as you can tell.
Blake, we've talked about this. You do get to a point where recruiting gets more difficult. If you're so far into the program, year 3, year 4, and you start to lose kind of the obvious trajectory, right? Florida, all the way up until probably the LSU game last year, you could make an easy case that they're building forward. We were texting last night after the game about Kirby's comments. Where is Florida left now from recruiting, real quick before we take a little break? Where are they at? And when you heard Kirby's comments, Blake, what's your reaction?
I think Kirby has a good point. I think if you're not eat, breathe, sleeping, making a recruiting part of your life. Kirby even said in his comment that, he sacrifices time with his family to be in, the living room of other families, having time with other kids. And, you see Dan Mullen taking, vacations the last week of June where the other schools are having official visitors come in. It just seems like, I can't knock Dan Mullen for spending time with his family because I understand it. I have a family of my own. I like spending time with them. But at the same time, too, I think there's a time and place for all of those things. The last week of June, obviously you can have in recruits. July is a dead period, So I think that the timing of those kind of things just kind of shows that Dan Mullen doesn't really eat, breathe, sleep, recruiting. I understand that he obviously wants to have, good players. I'm sure that, I'd be naive to think that he doesn't want to go out and get the best players in the state of Florida, keep those guys home. But I don't think the effort is going to be there enough. Guys in the state of Florida, they're guys that want to be, courted. They want to be, have their butts kissed. They really want, I've seen some coaches that play like Madden online with some of these kids, and that's not something that Florida's coaching staff is going to do. There are just so many different ways of building relationships, from a friendly type of vibe to a prospect coach type of thing. So I understand that some of the stuff is silly, sitting there on a Friday night or a Thursday night playing Madden with a kid. I'm not saying that that's something that Florida needs to do, but just the effort of other schools just seems to really trump what Florida does. So I think from a recruiting standpoint, it's a trickle down effect. You look at Dan Mullen going on vacation instead of going out and having official visitors come in, and there's assistant coaches that are maybe at home, on the phones with kids and stuff. I think Florida does a good job with FaceTiming kids, making things more personal, but that's just not going to do enough whenever you've got other schools putting in that extra effort.
Yeah. When Brett was talking about the Gator standard and how good a job Mullen's done establishing that right away when he came in at Florida, you can clearly see that on the field and the discipline and some of the stuff that Brett's talking about. Where I struggle is, and I think a lot of fans struggle, is I'm not sure that you can say the same Gator standard is being applied to the effort in recruiting, right? And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's what Kirby Smart was talking about. You're sacrificing a lot of family time, personal time, and different coaches will do that to different levels. Steve Spurrier hit the golf course a lot. But at the end of the day, you know, if you're Dan Mullen and as a coach, you're a great X's and O's guy on offense, and that's kind of your calling card. You need to at least have the other parts of your game at a level where that calling card can push you over the top. And right now, it seems more to me like, you know, Florida is relying on Dan Mullen's X's and O's and offensive acumen to kind of just hold on, so to speak. And I think that's problematic for the program. Let's take a quick break, guys. We'll come back right on the other side. I want to talk more about the state of the program. I want to talk more about Dan Mullen's comments after the Georgia game, because I did think we got a little bit of a different tone from him in the post game. Maybe a little bit too late on that. We'll discuss that, but I do think it was notable. So right after this break, we'll be back. Welcome back to the Swamp247 Podcast. I'm Thomas Goldkamp here with Blake Alderman and Brett DioGuardi. Guys, we were talking about, obviously, the Florida-Georgia game, but I think right now it's probably more important to talk bigger picture context at Florida, because those are the discussions, right or wrong, that are going on in the fan base. You know, Florida is only 2-7 in their last 9 games against Power 5 opponents. I mean, Brett and I were talking about it before the show. It's insane to think that 13 months ago, Florida is, you know, what was it, 7-1 or 8-1 in an all SEC schedule, going into an LSU game against a team that they honestly should have waxed at home. Suddenly you lose that game, and 13 months later, we are talking about a completely different trajectory of the program. I think the intensity from Dan Mullen that fans want to see, that they haven't seen the last couple weeks, showed up Saturday in the post-game press conference, right? Losses to Kentucky and LSU, didn't really see a whole lot of fire from Dan Mullen in post-game press conferences. And look, they don't mean a ton. I'm not saying that. But I think when you're talking about where the program's going, the fans want to feel like, you know, the coach realizes there's an issue right now and then knows how to address it. And I think from Dan Mullen yesterday, we at least heard more of that tone back from, you know, 2018 when he had that press conference after the Missouri loss where he talked about thumb wrestling. Dan Mullen brought back his kind of like hold the rope, you know, analogy, and the rope is slipping right now. I think Blake, let me ask you first. Did those comments do anything for you? Are they empty words, or were you, like me, a little bit encouraged to finally feel like Dan Mullen felt maybe a bit of a sense of urgency?
I was encouraged by it. You know, I think that he knows that the noise from outside of the program it's, you know, starting to get deafening, you know, and I think that, you know, I felt that he took some responsibility. You know, you look at, you know, post Kentucky game, you know, he said that Florida outgained them and that they weren't out coached. You know, those little things, they sound like excuses to me. And I think that he had, you know, some, I don't know. I think he took some responsibility for where things are at right now. So I was encouraged by what he had to say. You know, we'll see how that goes going forward. You know, I don't think it's any secret that Florida's remaining schedule is kind of the back end of it is fairly easier compared to some of these other games they've got there. So, you know, there's some chance for some bounce back. So I think finishing strong is what they need to do. You know, I think, again, he's taking some responsibility for things. So we'll see where things go, you know, going forward.
Brett, you've been in the locker room with Dan Mullen after similar tough losses, pivotal points in the program like this. I don't know if you've maybe reached out to old teammates or anything like that, or you just have maybe a general guess on what the vibe was like, but could you share with us, you know, what you think Dan Mullen's approach was yesterday when you come into that locker room and you're trying to regather your team?
Yeah, it's funny too. Like you said, a year ago, legit, we were in that locker room. Mullen was, I forgot what song, but we had, you know, like Little Baby playing or Kodak or something. And Dan was jumping up and down, and, you know, we just won the East, you know, everything was great. It's tough because, to be honest, he's tough to read sometimes. You don't know, like, you're going to get what you're going to get from him, especially after a loss. You think, is it going to be, you know, him blowing up on us? But I feel like if I had to predict, it was probably just like, he's straight up, you know, like, guys, you know, we got our ass kicked, you know, we need to work a lot harder. You know, some of it's on me, some of it's not on me, but in general, you know, we're not where we want to be at. This isn't the Gators standard. We got to have the best week of, actually, I know exactly what he said word for word. He'll be like, we got to have the best week of practice we've had this year. We are not even close to where we need to be right now. And it starts on Monday. You know, guys need to come in, and right now it's a gut check. You know, are you going to check out? We can't win the East. You know, we going to go play in the Outback Bowl or the Mayo Clinic Bowl or something like that. You know, what do you guys want the rest of the season to be like? Because I'm not the one out there playing, you guys are. I know I'm X's and O's, but in general, what's the state of identity with this team? How are we going to respond? And, it's going to be a tough week of practice, I'll tell you that. But in general, it's over. We lost. You got to have a great week of practice, and it all starts Monday. So, get ready for a tough week and get ready for the next week's game.
No, I'm sure you're right on that, because Damian Pierce came in yesterday and was talking to us, and he was like, man, I don't want to go out to practice Monday.
Gosh.
It's going to be rough.
Yeah, no, Monday is going to be a lot of inside run team stuff, and let's just hope there's no class misses, because I don't think guys are going to want to run gassers. They're going to be too gassed themselves after practice. So,
well, all right. I think it's important to talk about state of the program. We did it a little bit in the first half of the show, and I think a lot of that is centered on recruiting, because it's easy to look at yesterday's game and see that the talent deficiency. And for Florida to consistently compete, they've got to recruit, like Brett and like you were saying. It seems like every year it's Alabama, Georgia are landing 3 or 4 of those truly elite 5-star top 50 types. And not that Florida hasn't done that here and there, but they're just not doing it consistently enough. And I think the frustrating thing for me watching Dan Mullen's program kind of from the outside is I truly do believe, and fans have debated with me on Twitter about this. I truly believe Dan Mullen's an elite offensive coach. I think he's extremely capable of drawing up an excellent game plan, really even across all 3 phases most of the time. And I think that's an elite skill set in a coach. Here's my thing. I liken it to almost like, how they talk about baseball prospects as being like 5-tool prospects. I think when you climb up the coaching ladder and you get to the level of the SEC, you better be like a 5-tool prospect, right? And that's evaluating recruits. That then is, being able to work a pitch to sell those guys to come to your program, right? It doesn't do you any good to evaluate the guys you want if you can't land them. Then you got to be able to get them on campus and develop them. You've got to be able to put together those game day coaching plans, that kind of thing. And you have to do all the things that a CEO does, of all those little things, that Dan Mullen's responsible for. Blake, how many of those type of things do you think Dan Mullen has as a strength versus a weakness? Because in my opinion, it's probably about half.
Yeah, I would agree. I was going to think about half. I think that they do a good job evaluating prospects, but I think at the same time too, a lot of these guys are work in progress type of guys, maybe a couple years development. And I think, again, whenever you're selling development on the recruiting trail, you should be trying to sell, guys coming in and making instant impacts, not being developed for a couple years, seniority in there. You just see some of these guys that come in that are talented and capable, but they're sitting behind some other guys, not getting the playing time there. So, I think that, getting, again, some of those top tier type of guys coming in, getting them on the field early so they can help. I think that's very beneficial for Florida. And I think you see that from a talent drop off. Florida's got some guys that, maybe they landed that were highly type of prospect guys. Jason Marshall might be the outlier to that because he comes in and he makes an impact early. But you're just not seeing a lot of those guys, the Jeremiah Williams, some of these top tier type of guys that Florida's landed that are playing consistently. You look at even Tyron Hopper, who a lot of fans even last year were wanting him to get some more playing time. So you're just not seeing some of those guys get on there and getting the beneficial snaps that they need. So, I think from a recruiting standpoint, recruiting better is definitely one of the things that they need to do. You have a lot of guys that are raw. Even look at this recruiting class now. You've got some guys in the recruiting class now, one top 100 type of guy. So I think that the talent infusion needs to get better. On top of, again, I think Dan Mullen is a great X's and O's type of guy, but that's not going to do it for you. You have some years where, your talent drops off. Last year, obviously, Florida had a lot of talent, a lot of NFL type of talent. They had a good year. Maybe they didn't finish as strong as they wanted to, but they had a really good roster. So, again, I don't think you can sit there and you can go on those years where you're just going to out scheme everyone because you've got some talent. There's going to be some years where there's a drop off like this year. You're not going to out scheme guys that are just have more talent on the roster. Even Kentucky, not even a more talented team than Florida, but they've got, I think that Kentucky has kind of the same mold of Florida where they've got some really good players this year and they're playing at a higher level. So, could there be some drop off in the future for Kentucky? Maybe, but I think Florida needs to be on the game plan to where they're going to have the talent every year to where they can still, yes, scheming things up is great, but they've got enough talent to sit there and compete with some of these teams on top of having the game planning and the X's and O's talk.
Brett, you've been through some ups and downs through your Florida career. What has to happen, I guess, at this point? Florida's got 4 games left. What has to happen the rest of the 2021 season to leave you coming out feeling like, okay, this was a bad year, but we're still kind of headed the right direction?
Should I try to be, super optimistic or give my?
I mean, however you want. Honest. I mean,
yeah. To be honest, man, it's just tough. Like being a former player and just knowing what's going through the minds of 90% of those guys it's just tough because you go into a season and you're thinking college football playoffs the goal, SEC championships the goal. When you don't hit that, it's messed up to say, but it's like you start to think, oh, well, what bowl game are we going to go to? Are we going to make a bowl game? A month off, doesn't sound terrible if we don't make a bowl game. But it's like, It's tough, man, especially with 4 losses right now. And to be honest, I predicted us to go 8-4 prior to the year. During that Alabama game, I was thinking to myself, like, well, looks like I'm going to be getting some crap from some Gator fans. But to be honest with you, it's just tough. You just want to hope. I think Anthony is the future, and I think he's going to be pretty close to being like a Heisman candidate player, but it's just not a lot of optimism right now, just knowing, you still got to finish out the season and you didn't reach your goals, not even close to where you wanted to be. But then again, I think Blake, crushed with what he just said perfectly. We lost a lot of talent in my time there, other than like a CJ Henderson type of player, you don't really have any true freshmen making a huge impact. Mm-hmm. And you see that on all these other teams, especially top 25 teams, they can have 4 or 5 freshmen that are killing it right now. And we just don't seem to have that. So it's tough. I mean, you just got to hope, AR, crushes it next year. And, it really is tough to be optimistic. I'm trying to think of things to get optimistic about, but then you look at our recruiting classes, these next upcoming years as well. And it's like, since my 2016 class, which was a pretty stacked class, a lot of guys in the NFL, we haven't seemed to have, a great recruiting class since like that caliber where you got, 4 or 5 guys coming in. You got Voshawn Joseph, Chauncey Gardner, you got all those guys that are immediately playing and making an impact. And we just don't seem to have that right now. So I would just say, next year is going to be, a new year. It's a clean slate. That's what we're all looking forward to. But these next couple games are huge for the identity and the mentality, because you'll lose guys. I mean, shoot, you might have already lost a couple of guys already mentally. They've checked out. But in general, you got to finish strong and, give the fans what they want to see, good effort and everything, get ready. And just, you got to attack this off season. And Savage is going to have them, mentally and physically getting ready for a new year. But just tough to be optimistic. I know the fans kind of checked out themselves, but just, got to finish strong. Mizzou's no cake game. We could slip up against Mizzou. So really just try to end the season on a high note, win out, and get ready for a great offseason, because it's going to be a tough one. I know that.
Yeah, and I think the danger is kind of letting it slip further. I mean, if you lose a game down the stretch, I mean, you get pretty close to, in my opinion, the point of no return, where
schedule's too favorable.
Yeah,
for that
exactly. And I think recruiting, Blake, you've seen it happen with 2 coaches now. Recruiting can become a massive uphill climb when you start to have that kind of negativity around the program.
Definitely. There's schools that are going to negative recruit you, and that makes it tough on top of. Exactly. And if you don't have, whenever you lean on things like development, the trajectory of the program, winning games, you don't have that feather in your hat this year. Sure, you can sit there and talk about a top 5 school in academics. Yes, that could probably sell a mom or a dad. Let's face it. Most of these kids think that they're going to go to the NFL. They think that whatever school they go to, they're going to be able to be successful enough to get drafted, get film, and do all those types of things. So is top 5 education, is it a good thing to have? Sure. Is that going to work on some kids? Sure. But the majority of those kids, that's not going to work. They want to come in. They want to win games. They want to win championships. Do they want to be developed? Yes. But there's a lot of schools that people think that they can be developed by teams that are winning. So I think there's some inconsistencies in the pitch that Florida does. And obviously, pitching academics, pitching development, pitching the trajectory of the program, that's not going to work this year, especially whenever you're being negative recruited by other schools that are winning those games and doing those things that kids want.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
I just want to add one thing. I agree completely, because unfortunately, I've seen too many of my former teammates. Let's be honest, everyone thinks they're going to the NFL. When they get that opportunity to declare, they're gone. So it's like, yes, top 5 academic schools, great. But unfortunately, I'd say 60 to 70% of those, teammates I had aren't viewing this like, oh, I'm going to get my degree. It's like, no, man, like I'm going to the NFL. I'm going to, be a first round draft pick, and not everyone even utilizes the opportunities they have in the academics there. So I agree completely. It's like, when you think about it like that, it's like, shoot, if I'm not going in and I'm playing now and they're not selling me on that, why am I going to Florida?
Yeah. Well, I think you guys said it pretty well. I mean, I think, right or wrong, Florida's got the chance for this to go the wrong way down the stretch. And I think I said it after the Kentucky game. I think Dan Mullen is in a position at Florida now that he really probably hasn't been in before as a coach. I mean, I'm sure that there were years at Mississippi State where the fans weren't totally thrilled, but it's Mississippi State. You don't feel the same level of intensity from the fans that you do at a place like Florida when you're not getting the job done. And the challenge to keep those guys locked in, like Brett's talking about, is going to be very difficult. And I think if you're Florida and you're hoping still that it can still work out with Dan Mullen, you hope that he kind of had that realization yesterday that, I need to take a deep look at myself, what my staff is doing, figure out exactly the areas we're coming up short in, and I've got to get us to the Gator standard in those areas. And if that doesn't happen, I mean, I've covered SEC football long enough to know where this heads. I mean, Florida's in a pretty tough spot now where it's going to be hard to recover given the momentum that is rolling the wrong way in terms of the last 13 months. So, I like I said, I think Dan Mullen has a lot of really upside qualities as a coach. I think that, unfortunately, stubbornness maybe a little bit has led to not recognizing some of the issues that were showing up a little bit sooner. The talent drop off, I think for Florida, you got to develop Anthony Richardson the rest of the way. The one thing that always can pull you through is a truly elite Heisman type quarterback. And I think Florida does have a guy on its roster that could turn into that. So, if Dan Mullen is going to get through this, I think that, those final 4 games of the season, you got to see a lot of Anthony Richardson. And guys, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that, but we're running a little bit long on today's show, so we'll end it there. I want to thank Brett for joining us. You guys will have more on Swamp247. Check it out about his arrival in addition to our staff. And Blake, I appreciate all your thoughts, as always, on recruiting. That'll do it for today's episode of the Swamp247 Podcast, guys. Thanks for tuning in.